the only lights on were the one on the top of me. So that was fun.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Reverse Diversity panel. My name is Jessica Kim. I'm the one that has been sending you all the emails, and I really want to just thank you for being here today and coming here to listen to our wonderful panelists. But we're just going to start off as quickly as we can so we have time for your questions. So what I wanted to do is first thank our sponsors of the event, AvidXchange and Bank of America. And then I wanted to ask the employers here today in the audience, we do have one standing mic right there. So if you wanted to ask your questions, go ahead and form a line, and we can start with the questions for the panelists. And then now I'm going to introduce one of our sponsors. Dee from AvidXchange is going to be our moderator today. So Dee, come on up.
Thank you for having me. So again, my name is Dionna. Feel free to call me Dee, because when I hear Dionna, I look around the room for my mom, because she's like the only person that calls me by my full name. So pleasure to be here. Excited. Are you guys ready? Right? So I'm going to give you some warm-up questions, okay? And then employer partners, as you have questions, again, please feel free to just step over to the mic, and I'll just take you as you come up. So rapid fire. This isn't even on the paper. So you ready? Off the cuff. What is the most exciting thing about being a student at UNC Charlotte?
The other students. The people that I get to be peers with.
Love it.
I guess for me, it's been the ability to make change that I've been able to make, something that I'm going to take with me when I go, like being able to form a legacy, because it's not as old of an institute as others are around us. So we have the ability to make change that's going to stay beyond our time here. So I guess just being the change maker.
Love it. I'm a change agent in my role, so I feel you.
I would say being able to provide a new perspective to people here and back home. So I'm an out-of-state student, which is a minority here at UNC Charlotte. So I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, and came here for college. So when I came here, no one from back home had ever applied to UNC Charlotte. So I was the very first from my high school, which means everybody from back home always learns all about UNC Charlotte from me, and then everybody here learns about being out of state.
They can't hear you, and we're recording, so just start to the mic for you.
Okay. I would say probably the inclusivity that the campus offers, but as well as the activism and just seeing a different scope of activism from what I'm used to thinking of. And then also just being able to share my background in safe environments around campus in different identities in different ways that I never thought could really just happen in the university environment, but yeah.
I would definitely say paired with the environment, I would also say just being open to so many different opportunities and so many different experiences that I would have never been able to experience otherwise. It's just such a large campus and there's so many people, and it's hard not to make really lasting connections with those resources.
Awesome, thank you for sharing. And much like the employer side, right, there are key areas that help us all connect in different ways, but a common theme that I heard from each of you was the people and the environment that UNC Charlotte provides you, which is exciting because it's not that much different on the other side as you come upon graduation. We also focus on those things from an employer perspective. Would you all agree? Right? Okay, awesome. All right, we're gonna start off with Tylin. First question is for you. How do you define professionalism?
Professionalism, I would say, is probably being a part of the younger generation. I would think it would be just like basic manners, but also when you get into a job, like just how you carry yourself and being more so disrespectable. I think that professionalism can be shown in a multitude of ways, but probably just being able to do your job and do it well, but also out of the box thinking and kind of trying to achieve I guess, an above and beyond approach. So like, even if that means like, hey, like I have a different spin on this, you could be at like the lowest level position, but be like, I think I have an idea, and just being able to address that idea, whether that be in a spreadsheet or slideshow or something, or however like your head wants to hear it, still express that idea and not being afraid, I guess, to do that. And then another aspect, I would just say like your outfit and how you kind of carry yourself. And also like this may be just like one part of your experience in your career, but just allowing like every single step that you take or stage that you take to be giving it your all, because like your career is not just you rising to the top of wherever you want to be, but like just the experience and like carrying yourself in the way that you want to see yourself in 3 years, or look back at those photos and be like, oh my gosh, like where I wanted to be, I still had that same idea, I just expanded on it. And wherever it took me, I continue to carry that same level of respect and those same level of creativity and ideas. So, yeah.
I love it. Anyone else have anything to add to how you define professionalism? Did she hit on everything?
Oh, do you want it? Yeah, go for it. Thank you. Something that I personally am really working on in terms of changing that definition of professionalism is kind of that pervasive idea that to be professional, you have to turn off your personal life. And this is something that is specifically put on women a lot more, in that you shouldn't talk about your partner or your children or your past jobs and things like that. And I think that there's ways that you can talk about your personal life in ways that add to your professionalism. So there's always going to be scenarios in which that still isn't appropriate, but I think there's also a lot of ways in which talking about our identity and our personal experience can add to professionalism. Another area that this really comes up in my life is that I have an invisible disability. I have multiple mental illnesses, and being open with my boss and my other coworkers is really important for me to be able to have an environment in which I can reach out for that support when I need it. And so being able to ask those questions and say, hey, I'm really having a rough time right now. Can you work with me to get this project done? Because at the end of the day, my disability doesn't get in the way of the fact that I care so much about getting my work done and that I care so much about ensuring that this team is successful, but that may mean that I need support in different ways than other people. So increasing that definition of professionalism and expanding it so it's more accessible to a lot more people can actually mean that we have teams that are working way better together. They're more bonded as a team, and they're more supportive of each other, and they're more productive at the end of the day, because instead of people putting in work that isn't up to par because they're having a rough day and they just simply had to get their work in, we can actually have somebody else step in and put in that 100% effort towards that work and make sure that our clients and our other departments that we work with are getting the best work possible while our employees are being valued and supported.
Awesome, thank you. And what I'm hearing from each of you is centered around mindsets. So I heard that there is a mindset that you have to, bring into professionalism in terms of the beliefs, the thoughts that you have, but there's also the external factors of psychological safety, but also being able to have an environment that allows for you to be your whole self authentically, and again, that safe space of being able to say, like, I am me, and I need that support. Love that. You guys are giving us some nuggets already. This could be a good hour, right? All right, so question number 2, we'll go to Salem. Salem, what would be your professional attire for your first interview for your dream job?
For my dream job, I would say my dream job would definitely be an environment where I feel like I definitely dress professionally, but I feel like I could still express myself. So for an example, like how I came today, I feel like it's business casual, but there's still like my personality is still like you can see, But yeah, I feel like for a dream job, yeah, like you dress professionally, but you would still, you would still be able to express yourself.
Anyone else like to share?
Okay. I guess in my case, I would think that a job where I don't have to define why I cover my head, like a situation where if you have a question, you come right at it and you ask me, but you don't stare at me when I come home. Like if I change the style of my hijab or if I decide not to wear it for that matter, I don't owe that answer to anybody where I'm working at. And if you have that, like when I show up for your interview, if you have a situation where you are not comfortable with it, then tell me right across then. So my first step job should be a day where if I need to dress up, however I see fit, religiously speaking, should be acceptable. Like I'm giving you 100% of my brain. I don't need to give you 100% of my attire.
Absolutely, and everyone's like nodding their head, your fellow panelists as well as the audience. So 100% agreed. It's an authenticity, right? There is also a layer of researching the organization to understand, what is their attire. So at AvidXchange, we say tech casual, right? So I literally just left the office, came straight in. And there's some days where I have to dress up. So it's really a combination of the two. So that'll take us to the next question. And each of you will respond, and we'll start here and run all the way down to the end, okay? So Steve, how do you research an organization before an interview, and what are the most important things you are looking for? Use the mic for me.
Yeah. Okay, so definitely the organization's website, but primarily the organization's social media, just because you're more likely to get recent information from that. And also because you can get a feel for diversity at the company. You can usually scroll back and find like some, we celebrated like our 3rd year anniversary or whatever post, and you can see who actually works there and be like, is that an environment where like I'm gonna stick out like a sore thumb, or is that an environment that I like might slide right into and make sense in?
Absolutely, I love it. Before you pass the mic, you said social media. I am not a TikToker at all. So what are some of the social media sites that you go to?
I would not use TikTok for that. But I think somebody a little younger than me probably would. Probably Instagram and Twitter.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I like about social media, right, is like a company might profess to have a value, but like I'm a trans person right now. So in this like given political climate, if a company professes to have a value of being inclusive, but then their actual like front-facing presence that people are seeing day to day online has no traces of backing that up, I trust that less.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Just taking a segue from what Steve said, social media is just one thing that we absolutely go to. But then again, the job searching websites, like I would like to know what an employee is talked about in a space which is anonymous, where people are literally saying, of course there are trash comments for someone who was let go because they weren't good at it, but being in a position that we are, you can see a real from a fake any day, right? You have heard so many comments from your undergrad students that you now know which is an excuse and which is not. So having read like 300 emails from undergrads, now you're able to see, like, to judge between the two. So those websites where an existing or an ex-employee talks about their experience at the firm would give me confidence. Like coming here today, I looked up the people that would hopefully be joining us, and I went ahead and I looked at their social media profiles. Like I wanted to see who I was going to be sitting across from. So I guess almost all of us might have done that at one point or another in this few weeks. So yeah, we like to be as aware as we can to just be head fast towards where we are going.
Love it.
So I do a few things to kind of vet employers. I'm specifically interested in working in the outdoor education space, and so right now in my life that looks like working at summer camps, as well as my job at the university with Venture Outdoor Leadership. So part of what I do is I immediately go to their website. I find their first page about their mission statement, their values, their purpose, any of those kinds of words that are traditionally buzzwords. And what do they put on that page? So you can tell me all day that you have a really strong mission and that you're really committed to that mission, but if I can't figure out what your mission is within 5 minutes of your website, you clearly are not committed to that mission. Additionally, when you say that your mission, for example, is to build character and leadership within communities that traditionally don't have that opportunity. I'm going to check your social media, and I'm going to check the recent events that you've put on and things like that, and see if you're actually doing that. So does your mission line up with what you're actually presenting on social media and on your website? Something that I really find helpful is when companies list their mission and then on the exact same page, steps that they're taking to improve that and to put that mission and purpose into action. Because if you aren't showing your employees, even prospective employees and clients, what you're doing to put your mission into practice, I don't believe going into that company that what I'm doing is actually going to align with your mission. So I want to see if I'm actually looking at a company that I'm gonna work towards that mission, or am I doing something else that we're not even advocating to clients?
I would say what I look for is probably, of course, their website. Along with that, like if it's more of like a big organization, I would look at like their frequently asked questions. I would then go to, of course, their social media, as well as like different key leaders of the organization, their LinkedIns. I would even go to other job sites like Indeed or like, smaller things to see, okay, so what are you actually looking for? If I'm going to interview for you, I want to see like what kind of questions are different, or compare like what resume, or not what resume, but where I applied, and then where like on your other websites, how like those questions are similar or different, if they were just copy and pasted. Concerning social media, again, like deep diving into, of course, your morals, how much like outreach do you have with the community itself, news reports as well, like have you been in the news before, has it been for something more positive or negative, does it fit for me? I also look for like different faces. I love to see different identities in one company, because that means, oh, there's representation more than just for me, but for other people, and being able to see different perspectives and views as well. I don't want to go to a company where it's just all the same people. It just is like, okay, well, this is how we do things, but we're not seeing it from a bigger perspective. I also want to have a sense of community, so I would love to still include the activism like I'm doing at my university there, even if that means we're just sponsoring an event or something has like, or a cause, sorry, but something that has like a cause or something, and we're, like speaking for them or supporting them in that, or where we donate to. I would love to see that, as well as just having community with other peers or employees as well. Like what things like venture, like do you guys go on like corporate trips, or like what do you do? I'm not saying we have to be friends, but it's nice to get to know who you're working with, but also sometimes not being compatible also works, but like how much of a sense of community, is it kind of cutthroat, or is it kind of we disagree but we can still figure this out,
I definitely agree. I would definitely look for websites and on social media, and for profiles for on a more personal basis. But on the basis of what I would be looking for, I'd want to build on that sense of community. A lot of my experience with volunteering and in working environments has been in acting. And in acting, of course, in my acting academy, we had this strong sense of community because we'd known each other and we knew our differences. And I feel like that established a mutual sense of respect, because we were aware of our differences and it wasn't almost avoided or skated around like a taboo, if that makes sense. But yeah, just that sense of community is what I'd be looking for on those different profiles and on different forms of social media. I would be looking for a strong sense of belonging in all the workers there.
I love it. And again, common themes I'm hearing are centered around not just necessarily what you put on your website, but it's the action that you're taking. It's the employer brand presence of what your current teammates are experiencing and how they're describing their experiences from a DE&I lens, but also just how the organization is showing up for them to get things done. And then there is a common theme centered again around people. So it's the opportunity to bring your whole self to work, a sense of belonging, and then overall just equity, and not just seeing a reflection of the same demographic or same type of person working in the organization. Did I hit that correct? Oh, everybody's giving me a head nod. All right, so employer partners, does anyone have any questions? I'm watching the mic, so if you guys want to venture over, I'll keep rolling through, but definitely feel free to step up and raise your hand. We'll bring it to you, or venture to the mic.
So thank you for having us. My name is Tiffany. I work with Spectrum or Charter Communications. So this question is not for just any one person, so anyone can chime in. My question is, what do you want to see from an employer as someone with invisible disabilities? You wear the hijab, transgender. How can we support you individually? What do you envision that as?
So I think of this as having like kind of three levels, right? There's like very like baseline, like don't misgender me in the workplace, don't like be rude about the way people dress, like stuff like that. And then there's a level of like material support. So something I will check for companies is like, you might have company health insurance, but does that actually cover transition-related costs for me? Or is that health insurance essentially useless to half of the medical care that I receive? So having like legitimately like materially inclusive things like that. And then does the company's like larger mission and the way that they conduct themselves on like a political stage align with something that like I think is moving forwards? So like one of the sponsors of this panel is Bank of America. I would not get hired by Bank of America because they are a funder for the Cop City project in Atlanta Forest. Does not align with me. I'm not willing to do labor that puts money towards a project like that. So yeah, there's three levels for me.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I would just say that if I'm working for a company and they're holding a cultural diversity lunch, it better not be while I'm fasting. So I've been invited to events, like to speak at situations where like, so what would you like to eat? And like, when? And I've been asked multiple, so you fast, like we were talking about it outside, so you fast for like all the 30 days? And it's like, yeah, that's how it's supposed to be. And then I've been asked, so when can we keep it? And they're like, some of them are like acceptable to that, and we keep it the week after. And then you go there and there's nothing halal. So then again, I eat the salad. I love the salad, but I'm a meat eater. Like, I have amazing vegan and vegetarian friends, but that's for them. I was raised on meat and I would like to continue eating meat. So if the food is available at that company, is that food, accessible to me or not? And it sounds so petty, but imagine sitting in a conference room working on an advertising campaign or working on a corporate campaign and, just having that craving to like just eat something, and you go up and you go to the food place that they have and all you can eat is a salad. So for me, I think, especially for a comm professional, for someone who works in advertising, communications, public relations, we travel a lot. We have to go from one place to another more often than others. So if you go to a place which is acceptable, that's a plus one. Like, your understanding towards that company increases by folds. So smaller things, I think that they show you towards like acceptance is what makes us connect and commit. Because you have to connect with us for us to commit to you.
Something for me that I've noticed with my disability is how willing to accommodate me is your company. So is your company only willing to accommodate me because they're legally required to? And trust me, I can tell if the only reason that you'll accommodate me is because you know that I can sue you if you don't. It's painful when there's a company that I love their mission, and everyone that I've spoken to is, so excited about what I have to bring to the team, and I'm so excited to work for this team. And then, I have a rough week, and so I say, hey, I'm not going to be able to get this to you by Friday. Would it be acceptable for me to get it to you by Monday? And when I ask you something like that, I've already done the cost-benefit analysis in my head of, okay, well, is this step pivotal for someone else being able to do something by Monday? If I know that mine is a step in a process, I can guarantee you it will be done. I'm a very organized person. I understand deadlines. I can't stand it when other people hold up the process. I wouldn't do it if I didn't have to. But if you immediately come back to me and say, no, absolutely not, we agreed that it had to be Friday, and then you're unwilling to accommodate me simply because of the fact that I asked for it, that's unacceptable to me. Additionally, if it is impossible to find out how I can be accommodated in your workplace, so if I can't find anywhere how to fill out a request for accommodations, if I contact HR for accommodations and they come back to me and they have no idea what I'm talking about, and they're like, well, this company doesn't really do that. I'm like, well, you kind of have to. And I mean that in the kindest way, but honestly, the first step is actually caring to accommodate your employees. If you simply don't have the care to accommodate your employees, I'm not interested in working for you, and it's honestly not personal, but I just know that you don't care about me as an employee. I cannot fully contribute to your company if you are not willing to work with me on it, and I truly want to contribute to your company, but I can't do so if you're not willing to work with me. So checking in on those kinds of things of how do I receive accommodations? Who do I contact about that? Do I have to talk to my direct report? Do I have to talk to my coworkers? Do I have to talk to HR? Is the only way that I actually find out how to do it by talking to my one other coworker who found out after 3 months of trying to contact somebody who the one person in the entire company they can contact is? Because that's a problem. It needs to be a lot more accessible than that, because at the end of the day, I'm already struggling if I need the accommodations. So they need to be as easy as possible for me to find them so I can actually start giving you 100% of my effort.
One thing that I can't stress enough is really communication. I think it is up to the employee to communicate their needs, of course, but it's also, that can really only be done in an environment where you feel comfortable enough to do so. So there's been like instances with me personally. I'm a transgender man, so I used to be heavier and I used to double bind, which means I would bind my chest down, and that would really restrict my breathing, so I would have to take a lot of bathroom breaks during my work period. And there was no real ability to communicate. There was no option to do so because everyone was kind of, they didn't have time for it. So when there was no ability to communicate, then it led to the jumping of conclusions. Oh, they think that I'm taking a bunch of breaks. They think that I'm just slacking off, when in reality I'm just trying to breathe, right? So yeah, I think communication is key, definitely.
Thank you all for sharing. Any others in the audience?
Hi, my name is Zari Tracy. I work for Bridge to Achievement. I have a twofold question. A lot of places claim to be a safe space. What do each of you individually look for to determine if a space you're entering is safe? And in that same fold, during a hiring or during an interview process, what might make you the most anxious or uncertain due to the marginalized group you currently occupy?
So I'll start off with the hot take that I don't like the term safe space. It actually, like when someone says like X place is a safe space, that is a red flag for me. And same with when someone says like X is accessible, because those things mean different things to everybody. There are spaces that, due to nobody being wrong in this situation, could make a space inaccessible to me, but accessible to someone else. And same, something could make a space safe for someone else, but unsafe for me, right? So we have competing access needs, and that's just like a fact of living in society. We do not all have the same needs for things. So when someone uses the blanket term safe space, I'm a little confused. I'm like, who is this supposed to be safe for? That being said, when I'm then trying to evaluate, like, is this going to be a safe space for me personally? having some kind of description of what that means, right? Are you saying, some people use this term in like a therapy context, right? Like this is a safe space to share things. Some people use this term in like a materially safe way, like you will not be hurt in this space. So qualifiers like that are really helpful. And then seeing if those are materially backed up, right? If you call your job a safe space, but you don't pay enough for me to make rent, I am not very safe. So like, is safe space backed up materially? Because in and of itself, the term just means nothing to me.
I have just one word answer to that. If you have a if you have like a prayer room in an office, that's a safe space to me. Like as Steve said, it's absolutely different. I mean, we appreciate the offer. We not only appreciate it, we value it a lot more than we can ever express. But if I'm in a company, like if I'm like we go to interview a lot of congresswomen and other people like for our research projects, and then it's prayer time, and you're like, do you have a prayer room? And they look at you like you've asked for their kidney. And you're like, so there is one room, we can have it emptied for you. No, thank you. I can go home and pray. But just the ability, again, I would say a safe environment would be openness to the uniqueness of your employees. For then the whole office turns into a safe space for you. So designating sometimes is a part of the problem, as Steve just mentioned. I would agree to that.
So something that I've heard used quite often instead of safe space is a brave space. So the difference between a safe space and a brave space is, again, the problem that we've often seen in a safe space is that a safe space is viewed as safe by the people that made accommodations for others. Obviously, that inherently holds someone in a position of power, and even though you have made the baseline attempt to be inclusive, you've maintained that power imbalance, right? And so something that a brave space does that's different is a brave space acknowledges the fact that there is always going to be improvement that needs to be made. So there's always going to be someone that is going to need to speak up about something. And unfortunately, that is the truth. We all have different access needs, as we've discussed. We all have different backgrounds that we were raised in. And so there is always going to be a point in which someone has to speak up and say something. And as to what Salem was saying about communication, it's important that we have an environment in which we can bring up those things. So not only can we bring up what we need to change and why something is inaccessible or why a space is not safe for us, but how do you respond to that? So if I show up somewhere and specifically I work in the outdoors and I'm also pretty short, which you may not think of as like an aspect of diversity. It's fairly like, thankfully it doesn't affect my life that much. I've had multiple times in which me doing my job is actively impeded by the fact that something is above my head and I can't reach it. And there's no ladder. And I've asked multiple times, like, can I have a ladder brought here? Because I legitimately can't do my job and I now have to ask someone else to come hook this in or, you know, lower this or whatever. And I now look like I'm not capable of my job to participants, especially in the outdoor space. I look like I can't maintain my participant safety because I have to ask someone for help because this space isn't accessible to me. So if we can create a space in which not only can people bring up those concerns, but they're also addressed quickly and effectively and compassionately, that creates that brave space, and that's what makes me actually feel safe in a space. And I understand it's kind of funny that I'm now saying a brave space makes me feel like a safe space, but at the end of the day, a safe space doesn't really value progress. It kind of makes it seem like the work is done, whereas a brave space recognizes that there will always need to be forward progress.
I would say in a space where like I've been like the minority a lot of the time, I would say definitely agreeing with everybody with communication. I would say safe space to me, a lot of the time has sounded like more of an intervention. And it hasn't always been well because a lot of the time that stereotypical professionalism has turned into like sliding my opinion or my perspective on an issue that I may have had with a peer or a coworker or whatever the case may be. Instead of hearing my unfiltered, still professional and respectful, but unfiltered, or not idea, but the situation that happened, how it made me feel, and what it actually is. I think even 18 years old, I'm educated enough to completely express how I felt, including big vocabulary as you wanted or whatever you need me to say, but also being able to communicate like, hey, this was not okay. This is not something that I just want to slide past or be like, oh, well, we'll help you in this way, or we'll get you like a session with therapy or something like that. You're not just gonna bribe me out so that it's like, oh, it's okay for now, but then have the same situation either happen again, or just be like, okay, so the company doesn't trust me enough, or they don't really value me enough to actually address the situation with whoever it may be with, or maybe it's even like the rules that are given to me and I guess make it some type of importance, but instead I kind of have to like tone down my, I guess, I don't want to know, like my offense, or like, you know, not be as sensitive towards like an issue that is really a big issue for me, but maybe not a big issue for the majority of people. Like it's really not okay. So communication is definitely key, but communication in different ways. And if you can't understand that, then bring somebody in that can. Because at the end of the day, it's very highly important that in a situation where you don't understand, you're willing to understand. And if I need to be the key person and we need to bring everybody who's the head to the table, I'm completely fine with that. I will give you all my free time, including still doing the work that you ask me to do every single day. Sorry, but yeah.
Right. I would just say, building off of what Jillian said, a safe space for me, I almost want to say not only would it be like allowed to bring problems or modifications to the work environment, but encouraged to bring your input or advice or different changes that you see could be beneficial to your work environment. Personally, I have social anxiety. I hope you can't tell yet, but I have social anxiety, and I would find it really difficult to bring up a problem or an issue in an environment where there's a lot going on. I would want a space that is more personal and a lot more like quiet, in order to address my issues personally with the work environment. Thank you.
Thank you for asking, and thank you for sharing. I know I just took away a lot because I'm an organization that describes our environment as safe space, right? And so, and understanding that there is a different perspective, but it's not a one-to-many definition that, you know, gives, you know, hope that as we continue to evolve as employer partners, that we also are thinking about the nuances that go into the verbiage, down to brave space, love that. Open communication, trusted relationships is a lot of the things that I was hearing amongst each of you that helps you kind of identify what a safe space is for you. Okay. And hopefully we're creating a safe space for you today. Absolutely. Okay, see, there is a common definition. All right, any other employer partners have a question?
I have a question. So I'm Erin Elks. I'm part of the YMCA of Greater Charlotte, and this is just for me to kind of understand more of like the recruiting process with our company. So I know you mentioned with some accommodations, and communication is definitely key. I'm an advocate for that. But just so I know, how comfortable are you all when you fill out an application, when you have to check that box about disability, yes, no, or do not disclose? So the reason why I'm asking that is if you don't check, you wish not to disclose, or you say no at the time because the fear of not being selected and being discriminated against, right? So once you have the interview and offer that job, when do you feel comfortable when you need those accommodations to tell your superior, your manager, without it becoming maybe a performance issue, you know, looking at it as a performance issue, not that you need accommodations? Does that make sense?
So I will frequently check yes on that, although for certain companies that I do not expect would offer me accommodations, even if I asked, I don't bother disclosing, because why jeopardize my hiring process over accommodations that I probably wouldn't get anyways. When it comes to like actually asking for those accommodations, I have a pretty highly stigmatized mental illness. I have schizophrenia. And so asking an employer, like, I need some kind of accommodations for mental health, usually goes over pretty well, but actually saying the word schizophrenia does not go over well. People are scared of that for not good reason. So I think, yeah, when it comes to that disclosure process, the amount that disabled employees are expected, like, we're expected to violate HIPAA for ourselves, right? Like, we don't get to have medical privacy if we want something in return, which is to be able to do a job. And we, in this country, like, believe that people are entitled to medical privacy, but not if you need accommodations at your job. And so I think the reason that I frequently don't disclose is because I'm not disclosing the vague statement, I have a disability. I'm going to later be asked to disclose my specific disability, which is highly stigmatized and more likely to cause problems. No one is happy with the answer, I just have a mental illness. We're stopping there.
One thing that makes me a lot more comfortable to answer that question in the first place is, what does your website say? So if I am, looking under, work with us, apply to work with us, anything like that, is there anything anywhere that says remotely anything related to disability? So you could put something simple on your website that says, like, we welcome disabled applicants to apply and would love to work with you on what an accessible environment looks like to you. If you can put in the time to put that on your website, I'm so much more likely to actually tell you that I'm disabled. Something that unfortunately affects my life a lot is, I've said already, I have an anxiety disorder, and the way that occurs for me is I often cry. That's really fun when you're a woman in the workplace, because I get told I'm too emotional. But I biologically have a condition that makes me cry. So I really don't appreciate it, especially if I have to speak to a male superior. If I have to bring up to a male superior that I'm gonna ask for accommodations, I now have to state something that I'm already at a disadvantage of in a patriarchal society as well as an ableist society. And I'm also talking to my superior that, determines whether I continue to be employed by this company. And so if you can take the time to make that a safe space, but also ask an employee, what would it look like for us to work with you? So for some people that may be like, I would love to write you a letter about how my disability affects my work and what accommodations would be helpful for me. Versus for some people, they may be like, it would actually be really helpful if I could sit in a room with my direct report because I know that person, I have an established relationship. For someone else, it may be really helpful to speak to someone in HR because that's someone that doesn't directly control their employment at the company. And so working with your employees about what is actually beneficial to them and how the company and your employees can work together to create an accessible space is a lot more important. And I understand that sadly that doesn't mean you can have one set procedure for every single employee, but at the end of the day, showing that you're willing to put in that effort to work with that employee shows that you actually care a lot more than having an established procedure in place.
I would probably say, from just filling out an application, I usually check no, but I do. And I kind of just wait maybe like a week or two to discuss it and see if I can discuss it with higher management or whoever I fall under. Usually I kind of just look at the attitudes of people and displaying how they I guess they act on a day-to-day basis, how they interact with coworkers, how they interact with me. When they do find out specific information about a coworker, or is there gossip around the office or wherever I'm working. In past experiences, I have had really bad situations where something may happen to another person and it's laughed at or humorous, and then people are like, oh, you can't do your job properly, and there's just a certain type of bias that they kind of form, and that's not something I don't think I want to like talk to you about or disclose, because then the stereotypes come in, and it's a whole thing. So usually I kind of wait. I do want to reverse that, because like honesty is just way better, but also that also just involves research. Like, you have to know who you're working with, especially, again, just working under somebody. So I'm really looking at, okay, so if a situation does arise, are you gonna be mature about it, or how are you gonna treat the situation?
Thank you. And just so you know, we call it diverse abilities at the YMCA instead of disabilities. So.
Don't do that. Disability is fine. Disability is not a bad word.
So my name is Carlos Gladden. I'm the founder of 360 Degrees Root Small Business Systems. So I am a CEO who has people with disability for like 16 years. I built my own company up with my own resources. Not much was given to me. And the biggest thing I want to ask is, what kind of programs, because I'm hearing a lot about, what employers can do, but what can you do when you come to that company to help improve that company? Because many times, I come from the world of corporate Walmart before I started my own business, stuff like that, and I was what's called PSP captain. During the year of 2008, when Walmart started recycling, I was part of initially the group that started a recycling program in corporate Walmart. And we created a program called PSP program, where sustainability was help goals, was actually a program to help the employees with their goals, sustainability, helping boost their morale. So being innovative as a society we are, what can you do, and what kind of solutions can you bring to that company that you can work for the company to help make them better for other people who are going to come after you to help improve our society?
I can start with that. We can answer questions for you. We can sit down with you. We can give you our time of day. And honestly, it's not for us to do. It's not our job. Absolutely not. We are not paid to make you better. You have people who are paid to make you better. So why should we do their job? I mean, you wouldn't do my job if it makes me feel better. You have diversity people, you have people working for you who are paid their lifetimes to make things easy for us. I'm here to advise you on an ad that you made for Muslims to show you that that's not how I can advise you on it, because I would feel like a better Muslim inside of me if I can answer your questions, but it's not my job to make you better at all.
Yeah, I think kind of jumping on the discussion of brave space, safe space, right? It does make a company better for someone to bring up the issues and say hey, here's a problem, here's something that we can work on, how can we be better about this in future, right? But it frequently gets treated as that person causing a problem, when in reality that is that person for free giving you advice. Nobody gets paid more to offer their little critiques. So if you hire more diverse people, your company will get better because they will complain. But that's not what you hired those people for. That is added value that you are getting because no one pays people extra for that.
I 100% agree with that. My very first thought was, it's not our job. And unfortunately, that does often come upon us to stand up for ourselves and to tell you that you are doing something that is inherently against who we are, inhibiting our productivity for the company, creating a rift in the community of the company, and all of those kinds of things. And so the real question is, when employees do something for your company, when they bring up those issues, and when they create those employee support groups for people of that identity, when they create new hiring practices, when they do those things, you know, what are we getting out of it? Because it's great, and I think everyone up at this table would say the reason that we're doing this is so that there is change, so that the people that come after us don't experience these things. And that's lovely, and we've decided to, you know, take time out of our day to come answer questions because we do care. And that's not us putting ourselves up on a high horse that we're better or anything like that, but we can't spend every single day of our lives fighting this fight because that's what we live every second of every day. So it's lovely for, you know, us to take the time to make that complaint and make that change in the workplace, but we have to do that on top of our job. Because the minute that it gets the way of our job responsibilities, we're now not a good employee to you. So how can we do both, and how can we be encouraged to do both, and how can we encourage more people to come to the company so that we can continue to improve it?
I completely agree. I think some of these programs really already needs to be established. I feel like that's something that somebody should think of. I know a lot of the time in business, it's usually like, well, like insurance or certain things like that are the last thing in your mind, especially for things like a startup. But at the same time, even if it's something small, these programs or these meetings, even like things from like small therapy sessions or like things that you may do once a year should already be implemented, such as even in HR and certain things like that. Like people are definitely like, these is people's professions, like industrial psychology, like people are literally going in and seeing how your programs work and seeing where you can fix stuff. Like hire those people because that's what they're there for. I'm not saying don't listen to your employees. Of course they're gonna fill out, you know, papers just say, hey, like I saw this is not okay, but also listen to that and see what it is. It might be a minor fix that you can actually already do instead of having to hire somebody if it would cost so much. Just literally just listen. I don't even care if that means just evaluations or more than that, or reestablishing what evaluation on a certain floor looks like. It's not as simple, but it's not that hard either. You know, it's kind of like, even if that means, hey, every manager or every floor manager that I have, you're going to actually need to go, or in somewhat the same thing goes with like professionalism again, you know, like find out what your employees like, you know, even if that's just simple interest in seeing like how they really do feel, but also not holding it against them, you know. Hopefully they would have enough of a mindset to say, okay, well, and from a professional standpoint, from a mature standpoint, from a respectful standpoint, this is how I feel, or this is what's happening, and I quite frankly don't think it's okay.
I'll just add something small. I completely agree. I think at the end of the day, everyone at this table just wants to do their job and do their job well, but there is a lot to be contributed through different insight. So, for example, I'm familiar with the problematic aspects of being a traditionally feminine person in the workplace because I have been before. And I'm familiar with the problematic aspects of being a traditionally masculine person in the workplace because I am one currently. So there's a lot to offer with different backgrounds and different experience, for sure.
Thank you all for sharing. We've got one more in the back. Do you have the mic?
Hi, Amanda Raymond. I went to Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools, and I just have one quick question. Could you tell us all the one question you would really like to hear in an interview?
I guess the one question that I would like asked is that if you have like, look at me. And if you think I'm not a good fit for you, ask me what you can do to make it better, or instead of, I wouldn't say, no, that's not a question. I would want a statement from you telling me that we don't think we are a good fit for you, before you put me in the cycle and then I realize that I'm not, because you know it better than I do, that if I'm going to fit in that environment or not. Or more importantly, people think that that's a question that other people have problem asking. If you have a question about my religious identity, ask me. Because I would rather be the person to answer that than someone who might not have the voice that I do. Because I would probably go out and tell you everything you need to know, even more than you need to know, because I have the voice that many of my counterpart Muslim international Pakistani students don't have. So go ahead and ask me the difficult question that you have in your mind, but you're too scared to ask. I won't be offended. But also, instead of a question, give me a statement. Tell me that, come for a trial period. If you like us, if you think this is okay for you, great. We love you in the interview, but I love you personally, but the company won't, because that has happened to me. Like, I've been to places, I've met someone, and they think, you're great. And then you met the rest of the 34 people, and they don't think that you're great. Because you know the 34 people, I don't. So just tell me.
So not necessarily a question, but similar to that. I would greatly appreciate more transparency in interviews. And not even just in interviews, in job listings and stuff like that. But like, if during the job listing process and the interview process, you're just telling me you offer health insurance, you're not telling me what kind, what it covers, anything, that's not actually information I can use. That sounds really good, but I don't know what that means. And same with like, sometimes you'll get all the way through the interview process and still be being offered an incredibly broad pay range. Okay, you've talked to me, you've learned my experience, narrow that down a little bit for me. Because like, people who are already marginalized in some way have a harder time meeting their basic material needs. That is simply like the way that our society functions. And so I cannot waste a bunch of my time going through a multiple interview process for a job that won't be straight up with me about if I can use their health insurance. So not a question, but transparency about like materially, what am I being offered here? What is being exchanged here?
Before I can pass on the mic, there's just one thing I really have to say. There's the one question that none of the employers asked that I was really expecting somebody would. What are the questions you don't want to be asked? Because that's also really very important. We come to you, we offer our expertise, and then you ask us questions that puts us off really bad. So, of course, we'll meet out for networking, and I'm sure the time is running out, and Dee is just literally looking at me like that. So I think the more important question is that whenever you get a chance to meet us later, ask us what we would not like to be asked.
One of my favorite things that I was recently asked in an interview was, what are you scared to ask me? I took the job. I'm working for them this summer. I'm extremely excited about it because it's exactly the position that I never thought I could have dreamed up. But she looked me dead in the eye on a Zoom interview and she said, what are the questions that you keep talking to all of your friends about that you're terrified to ask me because it's too embarrassing, or you don't want to make yourself seem like a bad fit, or you feel like you should know the answer? And when you ask that question, I do think that don't ask me that question if you're still going to judge me based on what question I ask you. So that also requires a little bit of an attitude shift. If I ask you a question and you state that it's going to be like actually judgment-free, I hope that it is. And I disclosed my disability and I felt so much more comfortable, and I was like, if you are not willing to work with me to create a space in which I can actually fulfill my job requirements for you, please just tell me now. Do you actually want to work with me to create a space that's accessible to me? And she was like, oh my goodness, we had a person that worked for us last summer, and this is kind of the situation, obviously without going into that person's privacy, but kind of gave me information about how their disability affected their job and then what accommodations they put in place. And so from there, I was able to say, oh, I have a lot of similarities to that person in this way, and these are accommodations that have helped me. And I was able to ask other questions like, what are we expected to wear? I work in the outdoor industry with children. There's still some places that require us to wear one-piece bathing suits because otherwise women are being immodest. there's a lot of things that we, all of us, no matter what the industry, want to ask employers, but we genuinely can't because employers will judge us for it. So create that space, and I would literally love to be asked at the end of any interview, what do you not want to ask me right now? So I can actually get the answers.
I completely agree. Transparency is so important. One thing I will say is probably, yeah, like what errors do you see on our website? What research have you done? What errors have you seen where it's like, oh, I'm still kind of questioning why are you hesitant as a interviewee, you know? I would also say, again, this is not a question, but on transparency, because I was recently talking about this, please do, if there is a problem or a reason why you wouldn't hire us, and you already kind of know, but you know, we're kind of getting to the end of the interview where it's like, okay, please do email us and kind of tell us that, because I've definitely been interviewed or, you know, and I'm waiting on that email and then it never comes, or it comes 6 months and I'm like, oh, that was cool back then, but it's totally helpful that it's 6 months later and I'm somewhere else now, you know? So just let us know ahead of time or not be hesitant. Even if it's like blind carbon copied, just say, hey, you didn't get the job, you know? And maybe give a little description if you have that much time or whatever the case may be, but it's still, transparency is just so important, with whatever it should be. But, yeah.
All right, so Salem passed on that one, but you're gonna bring us home, okay? Austin, you're gonna take us home.
Perfect. Hey y'all, my name is Austin Beebe and I work for Honeywell. I'm also a UNCC alum, so go Niners. But as someone who leads the global LGBTQ recruiting as well as the Charlotte LGBTQ Employee Network Group in my company, I'm very proud of the work that my team has done over my past 2-year tenure, including rolling out healthcare for trans associates, self-identification for employee profiles, elevating LGBTQ individuals to the highest leadership in my company. But what is more that we can do to attract this community?
To attract?
Attract and retain.
Gotcha. The sad truth is that you don't hear a whole lot of what you're doing. So I would encourage what you're doing currently, and I would say that within itself is definitely going to attract and maintain the community you are targeting, because a lot of people like us are really just looking for that sense of community, and it's rare to come by. So when you find a community like that, I think you are a lot more likely to get a lot of the community you're targeting, for sure.
Yeah.
I don't want to cut you guys off, but you'll have plenty of time to network and share your perspective on this last question with the employer partners. So we are going to wrap up. I definitely want to make sure I tell you all thank you. Your bravery, but also the opportunity to give up your time to help educate and inform each of us as employer partners is definitely appreciated. I know I took a lot away of nuggets. I'm sure you all did as well, right? And I'll hand it back over to Jessica.
All right, thank you, Dee, for being such an amazing moderator. Thank you to the panelists. Let's give them all a round of applause. They did amazing. You can meet with them one-on-one in the lobby. We do have light refreshments and drinks and food. And so 4 to 4:30, we're going to end the event at 4:30. So please feel free to join us in the lobby with the panelists.